beautiful people, and welcome back to another soulful session of Mondays with Mondaine. And this is where we dive deep into the rhythm of life, love. You hear that? Love. You know what I'm trying to do, right? And liberty. And we can't forget democracy. And I'm your host, Jay Mondaine. And we're ready to groove through the beats of the week with you. So guess what? Grab your soda water. You know what to do. Hog head, cheese, and crackers. Kick back and let's get into the vital conversation of the day. The beat goes on, but it's up to us to keep the rhythm and democracy alive and kicking. And we can't do it alone. We've got to do this together. Today, we have a very special guest and a fellow podcaster and an all-around bad dude. My cousin, nephew, Chicago-born, Kansas City implant, Jay Mondaine. Now, he says Mondaine, we say Mondaine. You know why. We ain't mundane. And he's the host of the X Factor Sports Podcast, an influential podcast homed in Kansas City, Missouri. Thank you, Jay, for being here with me. And I've got to tell you in my radio voice, I'm darn excited to have you with us. Jay, let's talk a little bit about your family. Now, you came from a family of 5 boys, and you came up with a fierce mother. Tell us a little bit about what that was like growing up in the west side of Chicago.
Sure. Thanks again, Edie, for having me on the show. It's an honor to be here. Glad to kick back and talk with everybody, talk with you. And like you said, humble beginnings, west side of Chicago, youngest of 5 I am, and all boys. We're all 1 year apart or so. Youngest of 5, my mom's the youngest of 8, so we had a pretty big family. I'm familiar with cousins, growing up around cousins and aunts and uncles all over the place. But as being the youngest in that group, that generation, they really took care of us. I really got to learn a lot, from my older cousins and brothers. And, they kind of insulated us from the things that would happen in the inner city that you can imagine in Chicago, growing up in the 80s and 90s. And so we were able to kind of flourish in athletics. We were able to, be good academically and kind of follow the dreams per se, and kind of do the things that we wanted to do and not really worry about too much of the gangs or drugs that were around us. We kind of were protected by that and able to kind of flourish. So happy to be here.
Who had the chutzpah, or maybe the hoop spa, to marry a jock hailing from a 5-man family? Who would do that? Tell us about her.
My wife. So Danielle Mondaine, she actually likes saying Mondaine as well. So all of the in-laws, all of the sisters and my wife that are married to my brothers, they like that Mondaine. So we let them do that.
And that's the right way to say it, by the way. When you break it syllabically, it's Mondaine, okay? Nothing mundane about us. Anyway.
And that's true. That's very true. But yeah, so I met her here in Kansas City. She's born and raised here, and she's just as fierce as all the other women in my life. So it's probably where the attraction came from. But, she's an athlete herself. She's a dancer. She grew up dancing. She played volleyball, softball. She's much of an athlete herself, so she kind of understands that aspect. But we work well together. I mean, we've gotten along since day one. It's kind of unreal to be honest with you. We don't really argue much. We don't really get into it. We're very close.
He said much. Now you heard that, right? Anyway.
For sure. But we're very close, and we communicate like no other. And I think that's been the key. So, I'm proud of her and everything she's done as far as her successes in her career and, everything else. So yeah, that's my best friend, my lover right there.
Hey, listen, how long has your podcast been trending? And tell us a little bit about what inspired it.
So the X Factor Sports Podcast, so I'll answer the first question. It's been trending now, I would say about 6 months is where it started hitting that peak or that spike of going up. What inspired it, I've been podcasting for about 3 years now. Shortly after COVID started, I played minor league basketball. I played ABA ball here in Kansas City. And my coach, Tim Simpson, shout out to him, he had a podcast called the Hey Coach podcast. And it was just him initially. And he invited me onto one episode where he wanted to talk about basketball, top 10 greatest teams of all time type of episode. And the episode was supposed to be designed to be like an hour. It ended up being almost 3 hours.
Wow.
And so just because we just dived in and we worked well together, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed being in front of the camera. I enjoyed talking and telling stories and articulating those types of things. So it worked out. And then I was a part of a 3-man podcast before. So we expanded that Hey Coach podcast, did that for about a year, learned some of the ins and outs, some of the production side of it, and branched out on my own. The goal was always to do my own podcast once I got started. And I just decided to just go for it. And so here we are a year in, May 24th made a year that we've been, or May 17th made a year that we've been doing the X Factor Sports Podcast. We're on season 4, episode 11, every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. And it's been working. People are following it and just studying the trends and, how to put things onto social media and have some consistency with the content. And that's kind of how you make it grow. Consistency with content.
Wonderful. Now, this is your night job. What do you do with your days? What do you do in the daytime?
So during the day, I'm actually the head of business development for a tech marketing agency here in Kansas City. So it actually kind of coincides. What I do as a profession, I kind of carry that over to the night job with the marketing and the technology, obviously doing all these things on camera and, figuring out the marketing strategies of growing a podcast. So I kind of work all the time.
Okay. Well,
this is and it's all fun. What I do for a living is fun. I get to rub shoulders with some of the elite people here in Kansas City and beyond, and it's been a lot of fun developing and creating business. So that's what I do during the day. We do everything from multi-level marketing to web developing, design, hosting, building websites, to videography, photography. So we do all the above in terms of business. And then when I do my night job, I get to kind of expand on that.
Wow. I'm very proud of you. And my team is going to be bending your ear about how to do things on the right climate here. Listen, we're in the political climate, and being what it is today, it's important to look back at the past to see what may be before us. Sports played a huge role in the civil rights movement. And so tonight, I thought it'd be fitting to talk about the history of black athletic protest and the enduring and ensuing issue of racism in sports. We'll be using as talking tools tonight insights from Derek E. White's piece that showed up in People, and We Won't Shut Up and Dribble, a short history of black athletic protest, and Lewis Moore's article on Martin Luther King Jr. and the black athlete protest tradition. Jay, let's start with reflecting on the historical and ongoing struggles that black people faced and black athletes face in particularly. What does that look like to you in this day and age?
Well, for me, number one, I am a black athlete, and I was a basketball player at every level, from middle school to high school to college, and even some semi-pro ABA basketball. So to live through it and to see it on a greater scale, means a lot. It means more. It's dear to my heart, and it's all about breaking barriers. There's one thing to be equal in society, but there's one thing to celebrate what makes us different also. Yeah. And like you said, with Dr. Martin Luther King, yes, he wanted everybody to, be equal, but he also wanted everybody to be individuals and shine as well. And I think in athletics, that is the best arena where you can show your uniqueness and your differences while bringing everybody together to kind of embrace that too.
I want to do a little jaw-jacking about the rich history of black athletes in the civil rights movement. And I think for starters, we'll talk about Hank Aaron. By 1966, he felt it was his turn to contribute more directly to the movement. He sought advice from the great Martin Luther King. And what was King's response to Aaron? And what does it signify about the role of athletes? As you've read that piece, what did it speak to you?
Well, with King telling Aaron about just excellence, to continue to aspire to be great, your excellence on the field is a reflection of what that can be off the field. It's
Yes.
inspiring. And that's what I kind of took from that is the face of what it is you're doing here in the sporting arena. You have this platform. So let's not lose sight of where we are, and let's not be lost in the moment of the platform and strive for excellence and be an example for people off the field as well.
King indeed saw the power of sports in promoting social change. That was a smart cookie. Discussing Jackie Robinson, I tell you, his wife, his widow, 92 years old, and just as beautiful as ever. Beyond breaking Major League Baseball's color line in 1947, how did Robinson's activism contribute to the civil rights movement?
So with him, Jackie Robinson, and even goes on down the lineage of Bill Russell, if we get to that. But
yeah,
being the first Black baseball player to kind of break that color barrier in MLB, Major League Baseball being around since the 1800s. For Jackie Robinson, it was just a sign of hope is probably the biggest thing. It was an inspiration of what Jackie Robinson was. And King recognized that too. So, a lot of people think Martin Luther King was just about the march and I have a dream, but he also inspired athletes to inspire for their dreams and for equality as well. And I think Jackie Robinson is one of the first that you see in athletics to kind of aspire to that on the playing field in terms of, for that dream and to show that we can break those color barriers and we can compete and we can perform at a high level, but not only perform at a high level, we can do it excellent, and we can hold ourselves to a higher standard and not just be these jocks that are on the field that are Black or colored.
King was a baller. He liked to think he was a baller, but he was, he was too short. And he was a Black man that could jump, though. But he swam very well as well. When we talk about Robinson, his influence was profound. But it takes us even, as we step forward, we go into 1968 and we look at the Olympics there. Tommy Smith and John Carlos, their protest was iconic. What were the consequences that they faced, and how did their act of defiance impact the broader fight against racial inequality?
Well, I know they got expelled, from the Olympics after what they did. So you see everybody sees the big posters of, with the fists up in the air.
Yeah.
And we celebrate that and we honor that. But what they don't talk about, publicly is the backlash that they received being expelled from the Olympics. But all in all, with King obviously doing his following and understanding of what was going on in that climate during civil rights, it actually inspired a generation of activism, even to today. Earlier in the segment, you talked about the shut up and dribble, the things that LeBron does in the community. And, I'm more than an athlete. Like the things that happened back then is what inspires, young people like LeBron to move forward with more than an athlete. I think one thing triggers the other.
Yeah. Inspirational. And it's a brave move. James Baldwin told us that when a white man gets a gun, or the Poles or whoever gets a gun and says, I'm going to fight for my nation, they get applauded by white people all over the world. But when a brother picks up a gun and says, I'm going to fight for my nation, they're marked as bullies and dramatically flawed and all those other negative words we could come up with. Moving to another significant figure, however, in the movement is Muhammad Ali. His refusal to be inducted into the United States States Army, met with reprise during the Vietnam War, was a defining moment for history. And in your opinion, how did Ali's stance impact his career and the broader movement for civil rights?
Well, it's the same thing during those times in the 60s, right? During Vietnam. The fact that he was stripped away of his heavyweight title and, he was almost forced to be in prison, but obviously they overturned it. But he had lost 7 years of his prime career in boxing. And
not to
that was kind of
the money that he lost.
Oh, absolutely. The money that he lost from not fighting and, getting his title taken away, getting his boxing license taken away. So he couldn't even fight in Mexico.
No.
He was trying to find fights everywhere. Even a little tidbit about that, Joe Frazier used to actually let him borrow money back then when he wasn't able to get fights. They kind of have this narrative that they were, they hated each other, where Frazier actually used to kind of support him.
Yeah,
they had restaurants and businesses. A lot of these Black athletes really stuck together even in tough times, even though if the media didn't get a hold of it. But again, to your point, what that did for activism during that time, and that is what made Ali, even greater than what he was as a boxer. The fact that he was able to transcend boxing once those things happened, because he was able to use his activism, his beliefs, his religious beliefs, like people stood behind him, and he was about peace. Yes. And anything that the public tried to throw at him, it couldn't really stick to him because of the type of person he was. And that's what makes him so great. Not only was he a great fighter, but he's a great man. And that's kind of the character that was tested when he got stripped of his heavyweight belt. Just shows the type of person he was. And it just puts him in another stratosphere in terms of sports activist.
What did he say? He soared like a butterfly and stung like a bee.
Like a butterfly, sting like a bee. That's right.
His story is a testament to standing up for our beliefs and standing within the culture of our belief structures. We need to discuss the contemporary activism. People like, you mentioned them before, LeBron James and Colin Kaepernick and Maya Moore, how they've been vocal in their support for social justice. And in these times, that's ooh. And how are these modern athletes influenced, and how are they forming the conversation around race in sports?
Well, all these athletes you mentioned, Colin Kaepernick taking a knee, LeBron, more than an athlete, Maya Moore, getting innocent men out of prison, who she married, by the way. So just definitely putting 100% into what they believe in. These athletes, they use their platform to bring attention to issues, police brutality, the George Floyds of the world, systemic racism, needs for criminal justice, like we talked about with Maya Moore. And that activism just continues. And I think it comes from being on the shoulders of, the other athletes we talked about in the civil rights time and the legacy of the Black athletic protests. So it's just showing that their fight for equality matters, and it continues to matter, with consistent villages.
Their actions are indeed inspiring the next generation. Boy, time goes quick. Let's before we get too deep, let's reflect on how Martin Luther King Jr. might view today's Black athlete as activists. What do you think King would say to athletes like Kaepernick, who, as you said, took his knee during the national anthem, and the further fight? What would you have him say? What do you think that you could imagine him saying to us right now?
Well, I think he would commend them, for what they're doing, not only because they're continuing to shine a light on equality, but they're doing it peacefully, right? So I think he would commend their courage, number one, for what they're doing on these platforms, highlighting racial injustices and inequalities. I think he would support all of it wholeheartedly. It would just be a reflection of the table he set for everybody since the beginning. He also challenged people as well. So just to sharpen their critiques on capitalism and things that were going on in this country. So it wasn't just always about just activism and, inequality. It was at every facet of systemic racism. I think Martin Luther King would commend young people for moving forward. And I think that's where the inspiration is.
He certainly met the mark. And I think that was well said, Jay. This has been an enlightening discussion. And discussing these incredible athletes and their legacies with you is even a greater thrill because of who you are in my life and what I see you doing. Do you have any final thoughts on how we can continue to support black athletes in this fight against racism? And let's talk a little bit about the influence of modern activists like LeBron and Kaepernick and Moore, and how they continue to use this platform for this legacy on activism, and what challenges they face today, and what you see what you see us as fellow Americans, just not black Americans, but all Americans need to do to join forces. Martin Luther King told us that there was going to be an unsettling force that was set loose upon this nation, and it was no longer going to be just about civil rights. It was going to be about the rights of all people. And I tell you what, we've got a big job to play. What do you think?
No, I agree wholeheartedly. And like you said, it won't just be about civil rights. It'll be about human rights at some point. And I think that's kind of where we are headed, or where we currently sit.
Yes.
And you never really realize it until it's already passed, almost like a recession, right? You don't know you're in a recession. So you almost So I think it's essential to recognize and support their activism, to the athletes, both on and off the field or court. Just listen to their voices, understand their struggles, and just stand with them in this fight for justice, for sure.
Jay, there are not enough words to express how glad I was. I couldn't wait to get you on this podcast because I've been watching you and you force me to listen to Sports Narrative, which I usually just turn the channel because I ain't into it. But you make it interesting and you educate me, and so I've learned quite a bit from you, young man. And I want to thank you for joining us today and sharing your insights with us. And give us some last words, Jay. Sing us a song.
Well, no, again, I want to thank you guys, for the opportunity to get on the show. And Edie, if you ever need anything, for sure, you can get with me and we can set something up. But as far as the show goes with the podcasting, that's kind of the goal. It's a different taste from what you see on the big mainstream channels. I take sports at a different angle. I see it from a different lens. I always have. Even as a kid, with my brothers, going back to my four brothers, everybody would have their own opinion about how they saw something, and mine was just totally different from theirs. Yeah. But it always made sense. It came back to the point. And that's kind of the inspiration. This is for the casual fan who knows about sports. Sports exist, but they don't want to hear the same thing or people yelling and arguing or debating. We want to actually learn something about what we're watching and how it makes sense to the average person. So that's kind of what I like to do. And obviously I get into deeper levels on certain things because, again, that's where the teaching comes in. But it's all fun for me. I enjoy doing it. I love it. And, the X Factor Sports Podcast is just going to continue to grow, Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Central Time. Everyone can subscribe on YouTube or Rumble. And on all the audio podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Pandora, YouTube Music. You can catch it every Wednesday there if you want the audio. And, we look forward to bigger and better things moving forward.
Amen. And there are going to be bigger and better things moving forward. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in to Mondays with Mondaine. And remember, the fight for justice and equality is ongoing, and we all have a role to play. Until next time, let's hit a home run and make that touchdown and stay committed to making a difference. You've been listening to Mondays with Mondaine, and let's keep the rhythm of democracy alive and kicking, and let's do this together. Until next time, stay groovy, stay woke, and keep spreading that love. Right now, I'd like to do some special shout outs to our sponsors. Poshines, not just another restaurant, but an institution. It's located at 8139 North Denver, right here in the Kenton District, and you can expect the best soul food this side of the Willamette. We've got aunties and tanties daycare services, which, man, these women are superb, and you don't have to worry about mama when your kids are with them. We've got Adorn Electric. They really light up our lives, and I'm grateful for their support of this podcast. You can visit me right here on Sunday mornings at Celebration Tabernacle in Portland, Oregon. A special thank you to our production team, Dion, Robin, Andy, and Paul. Not one of them is bigger than the other, and guess what? They all stand tall. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and followers, and turn on your notifications, friends, so you never miss a thing from Mondays with Mondaine. And be sure to follow us on, what is it, Facebook right here, and YouTube right on the other side. And thank you for tuning in to Mondays with Mondaine. And remember, it's not just about the music, it's about the message. Let's keep the conversation going and make a difference one beat at a time. Until next week, stay blessed and keep that light shining. You know, I talk about a lot about knowing where you came from to know where you're going. Well, I came from the projects of St. Louis, Missouri, and I ended up into the majestic mountaintops of Portland, Oregon. It's been a wonderful journey, and Lewis and Clark took that journey from St. Louis to Portland, and I took it too. It talks about who I am, and as I'm with you often in the in cyberspace or on websites or on the what do you call it, social media, I want you to know a little bit about me and who I am. This book talks about my fantasies, my failures, my triumphs, and more than that, it talks about the resiliency of being able to continue to go forward regardless of the odds. I'd get a copy. It's called From Maladies to Melodies. And I hope that you enjoy it and give me some feedback. God bless.
Hey, it's time for you to come to Post Shine. Check out that catfish sandwich. Oh my goodness, is that the shrimp po' boy? Man, look at that chocolate chip cake. Man, I need to get over to Post Shines at 8139 North Denver right now because this food looks delicious. Or call if you'd like, 503-978-9000. And don't miss it, you'll be sorry.
In times gone past, we find ourselves making excuses so that people remind that, ooh, I've got to get home and tend to the brand new business. I need some time alone. Can't just wait until I'm finished texting on my phone.